Uh, this might be a little embarrassing, but I have no other way to do this, so I'm sorry, Lori. My wife would often say to me that I don't know how she feels, and the reason for it, she's been in a lot of pain. She has developed arthritis in her knees. She walks around bone on bone, and every step is extremely painful. And to look at somebody walking around like this and with a smile on their face, you sometimes don't realize how much pain they're in. And I told her, I says, I know you're in pain. I just don't feel your pain. All right. Now, it was about 3 years ago. Right? I had sciatica. And my sciatica went from my lower back, down my thigh, down my leg. And unless you have sciatica, you're familiar with the problem. But I will tell you what I experienced. What I experienced was from sitting down position to trying to get yourself up to stand. All right. To try to now motivate your body to move because of the pain that you would feel with every step you would take. All right. And sometimes you seem to be walking pretty good, and all of a sudden you freeze because the pain becomes intense and you have to reset your mind to continue on. Now, I had that for about 5 to 6 months before it really went away. And I tell you that because it was like about 2 years ago, my wife came down with sciatica. And I could see the pain she was in. I knew the pain she was in because I had just experienced it myself. So I didn't have to take myself and put me into her, all right, or step into her shoes, so to speak. I really was there first. I felt everything she was feeling, and I could see everything that was painful to her. Now, I've laid the background as to pain. I laid the background as to standing in somebody else's position, trying to experience what they're experiencing. And now we're going to look into the Bible and see what the Bible says. All right? How the human race basically looked towards God and how God looked towards the human race. And the first thing we find was there was rebellion. And it didn't take long for the rebellion to start. God created Adam and Eve. He gave them a nice place to live. He told them, don't partake of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And unfortunately, they rebelled. They didn't listen to him. They did just that. So they decided in their own mind that they were going to find out what they wanted to do, and they would set their minds to do it, and they became as a god to themselves, and they discovered right or wrong the hard way. He did not abandon the human race, though, even though this was continuing. He just put them out of the Garden of Eden. He even spoke to Cain and Abel, and we know the story about Cain. God spoke to Cain. He said, you do well, all right, you will, inherit so. So we continue on. Then we got down to Noah, all right? And with Noah, God was getting ready to destroy the entire world, but he found Noah. He found righteousness in Noah. He told Noah how to build the ark. He saved Noah and his family, all right? But we're going to look at Genesis 6, verses 5 and 6, and see exactly what was in the mind of God. So find Genesis 6, we'll start in verse 5, we'll continue to verse 6. It says, Then the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thought of his heart was only evil continually. The Lord was sorry that he made man on earth, and he grieved in his heart. So we find two things here. We find God grieved in his heart, and man was continually evil. All right? Well, like I said, God spared Noah and his family. All right? Now, if we continue on, we go past the flood, and Noah is coming out of the ark. We'll go to Genesis 8 and verse 20, and we'll see here in Genesis 8, verse 20, what Noah did when he came out of the ark. It says, Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a soothing aroma. The Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake, although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor will I destroy every living thing as I have done. So God sees that man is going to be evil even after the flood. He spared Noah's family, all right, Noah was righteous. His children necessarily were not, but they were allowed to go through and be spared. And he could see as the development of mankind after that, it continued down the evil path. Okay, now, if we go into the New Testament and we look at Matthew 7 verses 12, we'll see we're talking about the golden rule. So in Matthew 7 verse 12, it says, do for others what you want them to do for you. This is the meaning of the law of Moses and of the teachings of the prophets. Well, that's simply understood, all right? If I'm nice to you, you'll be nice to me, all right? Why would I want to be that way? Why should I want to do you harm and have you do harm to me? That doesn't make any sense either. But we don't live that way. So in Matthew 18, we'll see what God says about this. If your brother sins against you, go to him and show him his fault, but do it privately, just between yourselves. If he listens to you, you have won your brother back. Right. Matthew 18, verse 15. God is looking to see if we live peacefully with each other. If we can take our disagreements and come to solutions and settlements peacefully. Not to have disputes, not to have wars, not to hold grudges. He wanted us to live peacefully. But the human race doesn't live this way. Israel, God's beloved, his wife, always seemed to go back to pagan gods. And it's something to consider because, like I said, if you could feel the pain physically of somebody who was sick, try to feel the emotional pain of someone you love, all right, not loving you back. There's another way to experience them. Now, we can read in Psalms 103, verse 13, we'll see, how God looks at it. So turn to Psalms 103, and verse 13. And we'll start to read. Okay. Psalms 103, verse 13. As a father pities his children, so the Lord pities those who fear him. For he knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust. He has compassion on us. We're going down the wrong path, and he's making a statement that turn from our evil ways. He still wants us to be his children. He wants us to turn. He wants us to repent. Now, going back to Adam and Eve, once they took up the forbidden fruit, it was now a deal where we knew Christ was coming back to earth. He was going to come back to earth, and he was going to die for mankind. There was no two ways about it. Had they not done that, right, he would not have to come and die because they were perfect. And they could have been perfect had they taken of the tree of life and not of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But that did not occur. All right? So, we move on, and we see something else in Matthew 23, verse 37. And also in Luke 13:34, you'll see a very similar passage. But we're going to look at Matthew 23 and verse 37. And this is, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to him." God sent people to change the attitude, the mind of Israel. And they turned away from the message, and they killed the messengers. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, but you were not willing. That's horrible. God's heart was open to us. He sent messengers to us, and they turn around and they kill them. So we start to get some indication as to the feeling God has, the heart that he has, and what he feels. And you turn around and you have to look at something else. Christ came to earth. He was human. In the garden, he was praying. He was asking the Father if there was some other way he could not go through this trial. He was sweating blood. He didn't even do anything yet. He wasn't being beat up. His life was being poured out while he was saying a prayer to his Father to see if there's some other way this could be done. But it could not be. And he says, not my will, your will be done. So Christ went through the agony, the torture, the pain, the embarrassment, the suffering, the disfigurement, and he bled on the cross, died. All this is going on. The Father is now looking at his Son, who was righteous, taking on all the sins of mankind, and he turned his back on him because he couldn't look at his Son anymore because his Son represented all the sins of mankind. And so we come to this statement. All right. We know how we feel. We know how God feels. We see the sadness, the disappointment. Most of all, he is love. Love was not created. God is love, always was love, and always will be love. All right. Do we have mercy? Do we have forgiveness and patience in the love God has? No, not yet. We're supposed to be developing those traits. All right. So I'll end this message with this. In 1 John chapter 3 and verse 16. By this we know love, because he laid down his life for the brethren. And adding to that, he laid down his life for the entire world.